Coming up on Aggie Almanac, it may look like a toy, but this is no plaything, and it didn't cost NMSU a penny.
We're very, very thankful for the generous gift.
And the dean of the NMSU Business College is appointed the first director of the future Pete Domenici Institute on campus.
I think in part we did it because Senator Domenici and I are good friends. It needs to get started.
Hi, I'm Gary Worth, and thanks for watching Aggie Almanac. He retired last year as the longest-serving U.S. Senator in New Mexico's history. But the name Pete Domenici, along with the senator's legacy, are on the road to becoming permanent parts of the NMSU campus. Former New Mexico Governor Gary Carruthers, who is also dean of NMSU's Business College, has been named the first director of NMSU's future Domenici Institute. It's the next step in a long road to create a center on campus devoted to public policy research and business entrepreneurship and incubation.
Seems to me our history has been when you put new
Pete Domenici may have gotten his political start in Albuquerque, but his record-breaking 6 terms as New Mexico U.S. Senator will forever be remembered at New Mexico State University in Las Cruces. Domenici was born in Albuquerque to Italian-American immigrant parents. He started his political career as mayor of that city. He made a failed run for New Mexico governor before being elected New Mexico Senator in 1972. Part of his popularity resulted from the way he was able to give a high profile to New Mexico interests in Washington. Domenici also earned a reputation for his work nationwide in areas like energy and mental health. And since he spent many years as chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, the thorny issue of spending in Washington. The senator has also been very good to New Mexico State University, getting behind one initiative after another.
That water was an area that you must be involved in if you're a...
For example, he secured federal funding to support an NMSU General Electric partnership to investigate technologies to treat New Mexico's large reservoir of salt water. Now, NMSU is saying thanks to the former senator in a very big way. Last year, NMSU established the Pete V. Domenici Legacy, a multifaceted effort to honor the senator's impact on public policy and his contributions to New Mexico and the country during his historic tenure. One component of the legacy, an annual Domenici Public Policy Conference. The first one was held last August at NMSU. It focused on issues that were important to the senator and outlined by his longtime colleague in the nation's capital, Senator Jeff Bingaman.
So we have the budget, where he's demonstrated great skill at the process of financing government. We have energy, where he's devoted years of leadership to helping secure our energy future. We have nuclear power, which represents not only our past primacy, but also many of our future expectations. And of course, we have our national laboratories, which continue to be wellsprings of thought and innovation and creativity for a great many of our national missions. All of these have been deeply enmeshed in Pete Domenici's public career, in his thinking, in his plans, and in his hopes for our country. His leadership is on a national scale, but we here in New Mexico have been very fortunate that he has also been a champion for our state.
The Legacy Project also involves the construction of a building on campus to honor the senator.
Sure. These have already been labeled.
And housing the Domenici archives at the NMSU library. More than 2,000 boxes filled with documents and memorabilia were sent from Washington to the campus.
We're very fortunate to have this collection. Obviously, the senator's accomplishments in the Senate and certainly for the state of New Mexico are very well documented.
A final component of the project is the formation of the Domenici Institute at NMSU. It will provide a home for scholars and other researchers to study the senator's contributions to economic development, energy, the federal budget, national security, natural resources, behavioral health, and nuclear non-proliferation.
And that institute will be populated by scholars interested in the subject matters that Domenici worked on for so long.
It was Gary Carruthers who helped spearhead the Pete Domenici Legacy Project. And now he has a new job as the first director of NMSU's Domenici Institute, which he says will allow the university to bring together some of the best people and information to tackle the most pressing issues of today. Well, Gary Carruthers joins us now in the studio to talk more about his role as the newly appointed director of the Domenici Institute here on campus. And Dean Carruthers, Governor Carruthers, thanks for joining us. And this is yet another hat.
Delighted to be back to visit with you. And yes, I have another title, I guess we could say.
As director of the Domenici Institute. And
it pays exactly nothing more than I was getting paid before they gave it to me, I might add.
That sounds
little
typical.
Message, that's a message to the administration.
But doesn't it all diminish the importance of the institute that we're talking about? What does it mean to be the director? What is that role going to entail?
I think in part we did it because Senator Domenici and I are good friends. It needs to get started. It actually has $10 million worth of funding, actually $11 million worth of funding with the private money. And he and I been working together for all these many years, and so we wanted to get it started, but we don't actually have the blueprint of everything we want to do. So I thought I would assume the first directorship and get it started, working with the faculty committee here to try to design how the Policy Institute's going to work. And once we get it up and running and comfortable, we'll probably go out for probably a national search for someone who likes to run these kinds of operations.
So you're just going to be the incubator in a sense.
I'm in the incubation business, yes.
Right.
Infant industry.
Now this $10 million, this is coming from where?
Senator Bingaman, God bless him, was able to work through the Congress last fall a $10 million, what they would call a legacy gift, but because of all of the ballyhooing about earmarks, it was kind of quiet. But Senator Bingaman asked the Congress for $10 million to honor Senator Domenici, and it was passed by both houses and signed by President George W. Bush. And it's in the Department of Defense. And one would ask, why would the Domenici Institute money be in the Department of Defense?
I would ask that.
The reason it's in there, it's the only bill that passed.
Oh.
After he decided not to run, you will recall, we had kind of the Congress at loggerheads with one another. We were at the end of a president's term. Not much was happening in the way of passage of bills. But the defense bill had to pass. So it was tagged onto the defense bill, and it's stuck in some line in the defense bill, which we don't understand. And we've been working with defense now for probably 3 or 4 months to try to determine how we can get the $10 million here. And it's not an easy process. They tried to send it through New Mexico Tech first. And New Mexico Tech said, no, the money belongs to New Mexico State. We found out that was just a convenient way because there was more of a general contract with Tech, so they just send it there and you send it to us. That didn't work. So another agency in defense got after it. We were just ready to take over the money and said, wait a minute, we're not sure we're the right people to do this money, so we have no clue. And Domenici's about to call Secretary Gates, who's a good friend of his, and maybe we'll get the $10 million.
If he gets on the phone.
Well, he and Gates are buds, so we may have to call up the secretary and say, I know, it's like having a few pennies in the bottom of your drawer in the Pentagon. But it's our pennies, and we'd like to have it get started.
We sure do need that,
Yeah.
and that's a little lesson on how politics and funding works. But that $10 million, where will that get us in this project?
Actually, it's somewhat general in what we can use it for, and was intended that way. It is supposed to establish a policy institute, but it also says you can lease and or refurbish a building. Now, we had hoped that we would get this money to build a brand new building for Domenici. In the language, for whatever reason, they said lease or refurbish a building. So we can go that route, perhaps find a building on the campus that we think would work for this and refurbish it and spend the money on that. I'd rather not spend it all on that. I'd like to have some money to actually hire faculty members and graduate students to do policy analysis, which is the intent. In addition to that, we have a very aggressive private fundraising effort. And what we've discovered is the private sector would rather give money to the faculty members and the graduate students and the support of them than they would to brick and mortar. The big foundations and the big companies, for some reason, just don't like to buy brick and mortar.
So about a year ago, we saw some pictures of some possible new buildings and a garden, so that may or may not happen.
I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen as follows. We are now that the Art Center, I think, has received another $5.5 million, the College of Business now is first in line at the moment for the next new building on the campus. We're the most underspaced of all the colleges. So we've been told you're kind of first in line, so we'll probably go to the legislature in January next year and ask to be put on the general obligation bond list for some number to build the Domenici building. And that's kind of where I think we are. That has to go through the whole process here. The regents have to approve it, has to go to the higher education department, then it goes to the legislature. But that's the path we're on for that building.
So we're looking at several years down the road before we might see a permanent home, but maybe you'll get a temporary home for it first?
Well,
or?
Right now the temporary home is kind of all over the campus. We have some people who are doing this kind of work out at the Genesis Center and out at the Academic Research Center out there. And so they'll be around. That happens all the time. When you get overcrowded, you'll have people here and there. We thought about taking over this building and moving you guys out. This just fits us, and you know, we could refurbish this.
And you know, the wiring in here is great. We don't have a functioning bathroom.
And it comes with cameras.
Who needs it?
Yeah,
it comes with cameras.
That's a deal killer. No bathrooms.
Not for us.
Oh, okay.
We shouldn't be complaining like this. I don't think that's quite the right thing to be doing. But let's talk a little bit about this institute and what exactly its purpose is.
It has three components. And the first one, the one under design with the faculty committee, is called the Policy Institute. And that's actually stated in the language, in the federal language. And that's where we would like to do, we'd like to hire particularly like faculty members buy their time out from teaching or hire them during the summer to do policy research in the areas that Domenici like to do research in. That could be behavioral health or energy or economic development, that kind of stuff. And so that's one part, and that is the one that really is funded, the $10 million. Okay. Now the second part is the Arrowhead Center, and the Arrowhead Center's been around a long time. Right. And both Senators Domenici and Bingaman have been very supportive of the Arrowhead Center. And so the publicly financed part of the Arrowhead Center is in the Domenici Institute. So that's the second division. And that probably is funded now at about $3 million a year. And that's where we do mostly our economic development stuff, but we do outreach, entrepreneurship, those kinds of things.
In fact, incubating type of companies.
In fact, there's a conference going on right now that has to do with incubating the high-tech companies for nuclear security. Nuclear security. So they do those kinds of things. And then the third component, which is up and running, almost fully financed, already has a professional staff, is the archives. And that's currently over at the library. In time, when we build the building, those papers and memorabilia of Senator Domenici will be moved to the Domenici building. But in the interim, they're perfectly safe, they're well guarded, and we already have an archivist and maybe one or two other people who are full-time employed to work on the Domenici papers. So in a way, we've got two units that are up and running, the Arrowhead Center and the archives, and then the policy analysis unit is still to be designed. And it's in the policy analysis unit that will do these things like the annual Domenici Conference on Public Policy. That will be over in the unit that's not quite designed yet.
Now we had the first one last year, went very well.
It was a great conference. And we're currently working on the second one right now. We're holding the dates in mid-September, probably 14, 15, 16 in there. We tried it at the first of school. You know, it was the first week of school last year. Don't ever try anything the first week of school. We discovered everything that could go wrong will go wrong. New students are wandering around lost. It was a wonderful conference, but the university was crowded, everybody was busy. So we moved it back about a month to mid-September. We already have some invites out, which I think are pretty exciting. In fact, we already have an acceptance from a fellow named David Walker, and everybody say, well, who's David Walker? Back in DC, he's probably the best known authority of all time on the national debt and on the entitlement programs that, like Medicaid and Medicare and all that kind of stuff. And he was the Comptroller General, ran the GAO, the General Accountability Office, and he ran that for years. He's now with the Peterson Foundation, Pete Peterson Foundation. And we brought him in, and he's an exciting speaker because everybody worries about how much debt can we take anymore, because we have these big stimulus packages, and this guy's an expert on that.
Should be fascinating.
And he's a great speaker. So we have him. We have a fellow from the nuclear energy industry that actually runs a big corporation that generates a lot of its power. He's the head of Duke Energy, and he's been in New Mexico many times. And we wanted an industry person who was using that fuel source, nuclear energy, to talk about the future of nuclear energy going forward in terms of this country's energy supply, and he's an expert on that. We also have a person from a foundation that encourages nuclear energy, and he will speak about the need to change policy in nuclear energy to make it the kind of fuel it ought to be here. We've been very slow in the United States in adopting nuclear energy. Someone told me the other day who seemed to know that 80% of the energy now generated in France is by nuclear energy. I think Japan's probably 50%, and yet we piddle around with it here, and we worry about clean coal and burning things and everything else. And nuclear energy is quite a safe fuel, and with respect to how to get rid of the byproducts, that has been a challenge, but now that's partially been solved by re-engineering and enriching and going back and recycling these products and bringing them back in online. So anyway, the conference will focus quite a bit on nuclear energy, but then the showstopper, we hope, is Secretary Napolitano. Now, Secretary Napolitano and Senator Domenici are very close friends. We'd like to have a section on Homeland Security as it deals with the border, and if we can get Secretary Napolitano, we're going to ask for her counterpart in Mexico to come up, and we've already talked to the Mexican government about it, and they will entertain that invitation if Secretary Napolitano comes. And that would be a blockbuster to have Secretary Napolitano and her counterpart in Mexico talking about what's going on across the border. Or on both sides of the border.
Right.
Because we have now decided part of the problem's ours.
That's what we've decided.
Yeah.
These are all issues that are so timely. The one with the deficit, and I know that Senator Domenici was, helped organize our first ever budget surplus. Right. And I often wonder, what is he thinking now about our deficit?
He was here last week and he doesn't like it at all, I can tell you. He comes, by the way, to the campus every 3 or 4 weeks. And we put him in classes last week, and he was dynamite. I mean, and he said he hadn't been feeling well. That was on Thursday. I put him in the classroom dealing with students on Friday, and all of a sudden, he felt great. And I said, you're going to learn what I learned. You come down here to the universities, these young people will perk you right up. I mean, you'll begin to feel like you're a young person again. So he believes that, and he'll come down more frequently.
Well, he has a tremendous amount of energy, and I guess I'd just like to close out our session by asking you, this really is a tribute to Senator Domenici, and how important is this that we're having, that we will be building this at NMSU?
When you have a person of that stature who's willing to give their papers to a university and then develop around that, and he's been very helpful to us in trying to raise funds and to encourage people to participate and to invite these notables I just mentioned. That really begins to mark a university. University of Minnesota is marked by Senator Hubert Humphrey, for example. Southern Illinois by Paul Simon Institute, and Rice University by the Jim Baker Institute. And so at least in the public policy arena, when you can get people of this stature to join your university, it moves you way up in status, as far as I'm concerned, at least in the area of public policy.
Well, no wonder you're willing to tackle this for free right now.
That's right.
It's a very important job, and we know that you're going to do a great job with it. And thank you so much for updating us on this important topic.
You bet.
Dean Gary Carruthers.
And when the conference people come, I'd like to see if you could interview some of these notables.
Happy to do it. We'll put them right here in this seat.
Okay, good.
So we'll make that a deal. Dean Carruthers, thanks again. And we will be right back.
A gift like this and a partnership with Northrop Grumman will go a long way, not in promoting research, but also in education and getting students excited about STEM disciplines.
Welcome back. Someone described it as a bit like Christmas, only it wasn't December and there was no Santa Claus either. The gift, a piece of high-tech equipment donated to NMSU that will make a big difference to engineering students and research efforts on campus. It almost looks like a toy, and when you start it up, it sounds that way too.
It does sound like a chainsaw.
But this is no plaything. It's a Yamaha RMAX remote control helicopter. The price tag, $200,000, and it now belongs to NMSU's engineering department, a gift from the Northrop Grumman Company, handed over in a ceremony on campus.
The state of New Mexico has never come to us and asked me, how much money do you need to compete with MIT? So it is through the partnership that we have with companies like Northrop Grumman that we're able to continue to offer a tremendous experience for our students. And today we're going to get a new addition to our laboratories for the use in the College of Engineering, as well as over at the Physical Science Laboratory, who's another great partner of ours. That'll enhance the classroom experience, the laboratory experience, and our research environment for our faculty and students.
The helicopter is about 12 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 4 feet high. It is a state-of-the-art UAV, an unmanned aerial vehicle. It's controlled by commands sent from a computer at the ground base, overseeing position, flight direction, and speed. The flight range is 2 kilometers. It can stay in the air for 1.5 hours at speeds of 9 to 12 miles an hour. It can fly at an altitude of 2,800 feet, or 500 feet when remote controlled, and it can carry a payload of up to 44 pounds. The remote helicopter is typically used for observations in agriculture and forestry, firefighting, and aerial photography. This helicopter will be housed at the UAV Flight Test Center at the Las Cruces Airport. NMSU is one of only 3 universities to receive one of these remote control helicopters from Northrop Grumman. The firm singled out NMSU because of its history in aerospace and because it aligns so well with Northrop Grumman's interest in UAVs.
And today, NMSU is a NASA space grant college, home to the only honors college in New Mexico, enrollment in excess of 30,000. A strong sense of the land grant mission to serve the community it's located in. It does a tremendous job with the STEM programs. It's at a vanguard of promoting diversity among the engineering ranks. It's important to us. It's a great university for Northrop Grumman to be associated with.
The STEM program Johnson mentioned stands for courses involving science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Over the past decades, the number of students going into these fields, especially minority students, has been dwindling. It means companies like Northrop Grumman are concerned about finding future employees.
The statistics, though, are sobering. The Bureau of Labor study says the U.S. could face a shortfall of 160,000 engineers by 2016. In the defense and aerospace sector, we expect to lose half of our workforce of roughly 140,000 engineers due to retirements in the next 10 years. So you can see there's a huge demand. We have, since the last 4 decades, we've increased worldwide production of engineers by 2.5 times. We're not doing that well in the United States. We are down 20% in graduates, down more in undergraduate engineering. So we've got a real need to do more than we are.
When it comes to STEM projects, NMSU is leading the way.
The last count, we had more than 50 different STEM-related awards from agencies such as NIH, NSF, DOE, and NASA. So I think that a gift like this and a partnership with Northrop Grumman will go a long way, not in promoting research, but also in education and getting students excited about STEM disciplines in our country, in our nation, and particularly in this region.
NMSU's efforts with STEM programs is one reason why the firm is impressed with the university. But it also has to do with NMSU's long involvement with aerospace technology that started with the Physical Science Lab decades ago. It is the only university in New Mexico with an aerospace engineering program, with 90 students enrolled and the first graduate in December. And it has a unique relationship with the Federal Aviation Administration when it comes to UAVs.
But here very recently, we've gotten into trying to help the Federal Aviation Administration integrate unmanned aerial systems into the civilian airspace. So last year we formed a UAS Flight Test Center out at the Las Cruces Airport in partnership with with the Federal Aviation Administration. We have the largest hangar in the civilian airspace in southern New Mexico. It belongs to New Mexico State University, 150,000 square feet. It will hold a Northrop Grumman Global Hawk. We're very, very thankful for the generous gift, and part of our job as leaders of the Unmanned Aerial System Flight Test Center will be to get an airworthiness certificate for this craft and a certificate of authorization, so our staff and our students, we have students on our staff, can fly this in our airspace. New Mexico State University is the only university, really the only civilian entity in the United States that has authorized unmanned aerial airspace. We have 14,000 square miles which we can fly these, and we intend to do that.
This new, very expensive piece of equipment is an unprecedented opportunity for NMSU engineering students. It will be used to teach students flight dynamics and control in both component and systems levels, and also to research new sensing and flight control technologies. Now, those Northrop Grumman officials who came to campus bearing a gift also brought something else, possible employment. They interviewed 58 of NMSU's top engineering students for jobs down the road. Well, finally, it's time for our Amazing Aggie of the Week, when we honor someone on campus involved in something we think is, well, amazing. Patricia Kahn knows a thing or two about helping students succeed. She started working at NMSU in 2001 as Associate Dean for Development at the College of Education. Since then, she has more than doubled the number of scholarships available to students, from 30 to over 60. Now, if you would like to nominate an Amazing Aggie or have any comment about the show, give us a call at 646-2818 or send an email to aggiealmanac@yahoo.com. And that's our show for this week. I'm Gary Worth. Thanks for watching.